Today, when we had this morning session of meditation, I listened to the sound of the AC, and then I realized that I'm aware. My cat is aware, or maybe even awareness itself. What about other bacteria and other things? And what is the limit? What do we all thought about consciousness? So, for example,
how far down the chain does consciousness go?
Yeah, exactly. What is the limit? And
okay. What do you have in common with a cat, a bacteria, and a particle, and then you said, or anything for that matter? So let's start there. So let's take yourself. Would you agree that you exist?
Yes.
Would you agree that your cat exists?
Yes.
Would you agree that particles exist?
Yes.
You mentioned them, so I'm just taking. Would you agree that bacteria exist?
Yes.
And then you said, and anything else for that matter. So let's take a few other examples. Would you agree that a thought, when it is present, exists? A toothache, when it is present, exists?
Yes.
Would you agree that anything at all, whatever it is, when it is present, it exists?
Yes.
So would you agree that existence is common to everything?
Yes.
And therefore cannot be the property of any particular thing. It cannot be the property of or limited to any particular thing. Or let's back up one. When we say a cat exists, or a thought exists, or I exist, is there any difference between the existence of each of these things? The quality of existing. Is there any difference between the quality of existing?
No, precisely.
So existence is the same for everything.
Yeah. So,
and therefore cannot be limited to any particular thing.
No.
When a thing disappears, what happens to its existence? No, I'm not talking about the cat or the particle. I mean its existence. What happens to its existence? Existence is common to everything. Can existence become non-existent? Can it disappear? Anything that disappears must disappear into something. Where would existence go when it vanished? Into what would it dissolve? Existence cannot cease to exist. It doesn't disappear. So, we normally think that every object, all these innumerable objects, the people, the cats, the bacteria, the particles, the thoughts, the toothaches, we normally think of all of these as objects which have existence, which have their own little packet of existence, which disappears when the object disappears. But are we sure that objects have existence rather than existence having objects? Let's stick with our own experience. To take the existence of this glass, takes its existence and the existence of the flowers and the existence of your thoughts. What is the difference between the quality of existing in each of these cases? Are there different kinds of existence? Or is existence always the same fact? I grant that the appearance of the glass and the flowers and the chairs are different, but their existence, their quality of existing, is that not the same for everything?
Yeah.
When we say about the glass, it is. When we say about the flower, it is. When we say about the chair, it is. When we say about the person, she is. When we say about the light, it is. What is the difference between the isness of each of these objects.
No, in that sense, it's the same.
It's the same. It's the same. So, isness, being or existence, is the common element in everything, and is therefore not the particular property of any one thing. It is not limited to one thing. It is shared by all things. And just pause with the implications of what we've just said. Existence is the one thing which is not a thing, that all things have in common. Now, what is there to a thing other than its existence? The way to find that out would be to remove existence from the thing and see what remains of the thing. If we were to remove existence from this glass, what would remain of the glass? Nothing. So what we're saying is that there is a single existence, a single being, from which all things borrow their apparent existence. But that being, that isness, is not the property of any particular thing, or is not limited to any particular thing. In other words, it is unlimited. So what we're saying is that that isness is not divided up between things. We're not saying this has a certain portion of isness and this has a certain portion. We're saying there is a single, unlimited isness or being from which everything borrows its temporary existence. Now just go one step further than that. If we go to the isness or the being in ourselves, that is the experience we refer to when we say I am. When we say I am, we refer to our being or our existence. And in order to be able to say I am, we must know that I am. And the experience I am is not known by something other than itself. When we say I know that I am, the I that I am is the same I that knows that I am. Therefore, it is our experience that existence is known by itself. It is aware. So existence is not something dead and inert. Existence is aware. And the religious name for that is God, self-aware being, from which all seeming things borrow their apparently individual identity. That's what God is, self-aware existence. And it is shining as everything. There is nothing to anything other than its existence. In other words, there is nothing to anything other than God's infinite self-aware being.
So your answer is there is no limits to consciousness. It's a shared property.
Yes. So when we say, I'm going to just push you even further. So yes, it's true at a certain stage to say there is no limit to consciousness or self-aware being. Or another way of saying that is it is unlimited or infinite. Infinite means not finite, infinite. But even that is not quite right. Because in order to say consciousness is not limited, we would have to find something that is limited to contrast it with. But we have already seen that all there is to anything is its existence. And existence, has no limits, so we can't even find something limited to say consciousness is not that. So in relation to the belief that consciousness is limited, it is valid as a halfway stage to say it is unlimited or infinite. But in truth, it is not limited or unlimited. It is not finite or infinite. But the mind simply cannot conceptualize that. So the best the mind can do is to say it is infinite. But that statement makes a concession to the mind's belief in finite things. When those finite things are investigated, we don't find them. And quantum physics has arrived at the same conclusion. You see, you think that I, Rupert, this body, has existence. Objects don't have existence. That's what our culture believes. Our culture believes that every object has its own existence. Objects don't have existence. Existence is not a byproduct or a quality of the object. Existence has objects. Objects don't have existence. So we think, in conventional thought, thinks that there are trillions of objects that have existence. In other words, we think that existence is something that can be divided up, parceled out to different objects, and each object has their own little bit of existence. This has a very little bit of existence, and this room has a bit more of existence, and America has even more, and the world has even more. But existence or being is not something that can be parceled up. Existence cannot be divided. It's like space, relatively speaking. It's not something that can be divided up. It is because we put the object first rather than consciousness first. We think there is the object first, and consciousness appears later as a byproduct of that object, and then views that object. In other words, there is the world first, and then the body, and then the brain, and then the mind, and finally, at the last minute, something called consciousness appears. And that consciousness comes and goes, and that the world always exists, independent of consciousness. But that is just not our experience. There is no evidence for it. Consciousness is our primary experience. Before it's possible to have an experience of anything, I must be both present and conscious or aware. We should put consciousness first. Everything else is downstream of consciousness. Everything else comes after consciousness. Because that is our experience. I'm not talking about beliefs or ideas or theories. I'm just talking simple experience. In order to experience anything, you must first have two qualities. You must be present and you must be aware. That's what you essentially are, present and aware. That is being and knowing. In other words, awareness. That awareness can't be divided up. Everything arises in that awareness. But awareness itself can't be parceled up. And awareness is present. Yes, it has existence. Awareness is. I am aware. I am. That is, I am present. I have being. I have existence. And the I that I am is aware. So these two qualities, being or existence, I am. In order to experience anything, I must first be present. I am. There is being. And the I that I am is aware. Those two qualities, to be and to know, must be present before you can know a thought or a world or a feeling or a sensation or an anything. So put awareness first. Why? Because it's your primary experience. And see that nothing that appears in awareness divides awareness. Isn't that your experience? have you, awareness, ever been divided by a thought, sensation, or a perception? Or is your awareness always whole? Could it ever be broken? Could you have an experience that would break or fragment awareness? Imagine an experience. Could anything fragment the awareness that knows it? It's indestructible. Not because it's so strong, but because it's so empty. There's nothing there, objective, to be broken. Everything that arises in awareness, and our entire experience arises in awareness. Is that clear to you? So there is no evidence, zero evidence that there is anything outside awareness. Consciousness is prior to mind.
Exactly.
So let's go to the analogy of the dream. A person falls asleep in Garrison and dreams that he's walking on the streets of London. So the dreamer is the person in Garrison, and within the dreamer's mind, he imagines the streets of London. But in order to view the streets of London, the dreamer has to forget that he is dreaming and enter into his own dream. And he views the streets of London from the perspective of the dreamed character in the dream. Are you with me? Now, so the entire dream takes place in the dreamer's mind, but it is viewed, but the streets of London, the dreamed world, is viewed from a character, the dreamed character, in that world. So the dreamer's mind has divided itself into two parts. The dreamed character's mind and the dreamed character's world, the streets of London. The dreamer has divided its own mind into two parts. The dreamed character made out of mind and the dreamed world made out of matter. Now, everything on the streets of London that is viewed by the dreamed character seems to be separate from itself and made out of something other than itself. Yes? The streets of London seem to be outside the mind of the dreamed character. And therefore the dreamed character calls this stuff that is not mind, that is not taking place inside itself. The dreamed character calls it matter. So from the perspective of the dreamed character, experience consists of two elements: mind on the inside, out of which his thoughts and feelings and perceptions are made, and matter on the outside, out of which the world is made. But then the dreamer wakes up and realizes that the stuff out of which the dreamed character's mind was made and the dreamed character's world was made, in other words, the stuff out of which mind and matter were made, was its own infinite mind, which is prior to the mind of the dreamed character, or consciousness. So I would suggest that we, each of us, are like dreamed characters in the mind of infinite consciousness. And it is because we are dreamed subjects of experience that the world out there looks as if it is made out of matter. Just like the dreamed world, the streets of London, looks as if it is made out of matter from the perspective of the dreamed character on the streets of London. But in fact, everything, the streets of London and the dreamer's mind, are made out of the streets of London and the dreamed character's mind are made out of the single indivisible consciousness of the dreamer. And I would suggest that all of this is made out of consciousness, but appears to be divided into mind and matter, because duality is the mechanism through which creation takes place. The observer and the observed is the mechanism through which something seems to come into existence, which again is not so far from quantum mechanics. Atmananda Krishna Menon relates a very pivotal moment in his own understanding when he was meditating and going into Nirvikapa Samadhi, and he heard a horse and cart coming down the road, and the sound started at a distance and he got closer and closer, and as it got closer and closer it became more and more disturbing to him and prevented him from going into Nirvikapa Samadhi. And when the sound was at its loudest, he suddenly had this spontaneous realization: the sound is inside me, in this here-ness that you speak of. It's not outside of me, and how could something inside of me disturb me? And at that moment he realized that all experience was inside, appearing in himself, and all there is in himself, out of which experience could be made, is himself. And from then on, it was not possible for anything to be disturbing any longer. Now there may be, as you say, the habit of feeling that things are outside us is so strong that in almost all cases, even after a very genuine experience, such as you describe, which as you rightly describe, is even more real than the reality we once attribute. It has an absolute certainty about it that objective reality can never have. So it has a degree of reality even greater than the reality we normally attribute to things. Even when such an experience has taken place, the possibility of being fooled by Maya still remains. The exact same experience happened to me when I was staying shortly after I met Francis in Northern California. And it was a similar thing. There was a dog. We were having a conversation in such like this, and there was a dog barking on the other side of the valley, and I heard the sound, and I said to him, a little bit frustrated, "What that sound? That dog is so obviously on the other side of the valley. What do you mean? It's all inside me?" And I remember the frustration I felt at hearing what he was saying, somehow intuiting that it was true. But I thought, no, if I go to my experience, it's way over there in a distance. That is indisputable. I was sitting on the floor, and he said, "Close your eyes and put your hands on the floor." And I remember closing my eyes and putting my hands on the floor like this, and then he said, "Where does that sensation take place?" And for some reason, it was just crystal clear that this new sensation, this new experience, took place inside me. And it came with the same certainty that you described. It's even if the Buddha himself had appeared and said, no, that sensation takes place outside of you, I would have said, no, that experience takes place in me. And then I went back to the barking dog, and it was so clear that the sound was inside, that no experience had ever taken place that was outside of myself. It was felt with such certainty. However, that didn't prevent the old habits of conceiving objects outside of myself from reappearing, because I had been rehearsing this habit successfully for 30-odd years. It came back. So the kind of meditations we do here, and the yoga that we do here, are loving cooperations in which we encourage experience to be felt in this way all the time. Having felt it once, you know it's your experience. You can always go back there. You know where to go to access this experience. But you don't want it to be an extraordinary experience that happens every now and then when you've been sitting peacefully in meditation. You want it, first of all, all the time in meditation, but also you don't just want it on a 7-day retreat. You want it when you go home, when you go shopping, when you're driving, when you're having a difficult conversation with your bank manager or your neighbours or your whoever, whatever. You want it all the time. Why? Because it's the reality, it's true all the time. You want to live with what is true. If we go to the isness or the being in ourselves, that is the experience we refer to when we say I am. When we say I am, we refer to our being or our existence. And in order to be able to say I am, we must know that I am. And the experience I am is not known by something other than itself. When we say, I know that I am, the I that I am is the same I that knows that I am. Therefore, it is our experience that existence is known by itself. It is aware. So existence is not something dead and inert. Existence is aware. And the religious name for that is God, self-aware being, from which all seeming things borrow their apparently individual identity. That's what God is, self-aware existence. And it is shining as everything. There is nothing to anything other than its existence. In other words, there is nothing to anything other than God's infinite self-aware being.